It is Monday, November 2nd, 2015. I am Doug Neill. This is Verbal to Visual Video, and today we've got a little bit different of a video for you related to a series that I shared a few weeks back on storytelling using maps, photos, and sketches, in which I documented a bit of the process that I went through to create this set of video slides for a talk that my friend Heath was giving at the Candidate Experience Symposium. And that event went really well, and thankfully someone recorded his talk. So what I have just finished doing was I took the recording of Heath up on stage and added in the video clips that I had contributed at the right spots within that talk to give it a little bit more of a finished video, polished presentation look to it. And I thought I would share that full video with you all as an example of one way of building in more visuals into the sharing of ideas and the telling of stories. That particular example of drawing on a map and throwing in sketches and photos was a really fun combination of elements to build into that type of idea sharing experience. And I think that by seeing it in context and actually seeing Heath on stage, you'll get a much better idea of what you might be able to do, or the way that that all comes together in a room with someone up on stage and an audience there watching. For a bit of context, the Candidate Experience Symposium is an event for those within an organization that are in control of the hiring process, of interacting with potential job candidates, and what exactly that looks like. Heath, as you will hear, has a lot of experience working with different companies and seeking out jobs all across the country. And he was there to share his perspective as a millennial on that whole process. So without further ado, let's get into his talk.
Is my mic working? Can you guys hear me? Cool. So I've been having an awesome time here with you guys today, and I did a thoroughly great job of embarrassing myself last night at the reception, so I'm just going to start off with that. I was talking to Molly, who did an amazing presentation this morning, and I had seen on her Twitter bio that she says that she's the female Jerry Maguire. I was like, that sounds really neat, but I had no idea who Jerry Maguire is. And so I knew that it was going to be one of those opportunities where I knew it was going to be a dumb question to ask, but I needed some context for our conversation. So I said, it's great to meet you, Molly, but I gotta know who's Jerry Maguire. And she kind of laughed, and I was like, no, seriously, who's Jerry Maguire? And she was like, how old are you? Old enough to dream, but too young to really far without getting hitched with a lot of rates. So I'm 24. And I'm super grateful here that Elaine asked me to come and speak. She saw our news story on CBS a couple months ago, and she called me up, her and Ed, and she said, Heath, I run this awesome organization called the Talent Board, and she told me all about the mission, the community of people who come here to try to improve the candidate experience, and all the great companies who come here and try to figure out new ways to attract amazing talent and get really great people to come and work with them. And she said, I would love for you to come and just share your story, an opportunity to be yourself. And so that's why I'm here today. And I asked her, before we got on the phone, I said, Elaine, it sounds like you have a lot of really great people who have been in the industry for years and years to come and speak and share really great knowledge and data. Why do you want me to come talk? And she said, well, do you want the truth? And I'm sitting in my head like, what are you about to tell me that's going to be so bad that you need to preface it by saying, do you want to know the truth? I said, yes, that would be nice. I would like to know the truth. And she said, you're a millennial, and there's a lot of preconceived notions about millennials. And she said, one is that they don't want to work. Another is that they don't want to stay in a business for very long or at a company for a very long period of time. And then there's some other ones like they don't want to have a boss, they want to make a lot of money, not necessarily have all the responsibility. I think it was something along those lines. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, so you want the guy who just went and worked a job in every state to go and talk to them about this whole idea of millennials not wanting to work a job for very long. He's like, yeah, that's it. So that's why I'm here, and hopefully I can provide a unique kind of backstory, and really just going to share my story and some of the things I experienced while traveling around the country this past year with my wife in our 20-year-old RV and me trying to find jobs in every state. But to give you a little bit of context on what compels a person to go and work a job in every state, I'll give you a little bit of backstory. My name is Heath, and I had to wear a lot of name tags this year. The name of our film was Hourly America, and the whole mission was for me to go and work a job in every state. And so the way I came up with this idea was after college, I joined a software company and doing technology sales. I was actually in the HR industry. I was selling an employee recognition platform called You Earned It. And I really liked what I was doing, and I thought, I may have a future in this. Maybe I can do sales for a little while, and I'll get some really great experience. Maybe I can rise up, and I can see myself doing this for a little while. And I would spend most of my days writing emails to HR professionals, but none of them emailed me back, so I had to figure something out. So I'm at this kind of crossroads, like, what do I want to do next? Where do I want to go? I'm 23, and I've been doing this for about 9 months now. And I'm like a lot of my fellow peers and people my age in the sense of what I want in a job, in a career. I want meaning, I want recognition, respect, and preferably a 6-figure income that allows me to work on the beach somewhere. But I couldn't find any of these jobs that were hiring, at least none of them that said, hey, you can go work on a beach with your laptop. And so I had to figure something else out. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do after this? And something somebody said to me about your 20s really stuck out to me. They said your 20s are kind of like throwing a bunch of wet spaghetti needles at the wall and seeing what sticks. And I love that quote, because for me, the next several months, I started thinking about what's possible for me. Where am I going to go? I don't like where I am now, but maybe if I just go try a bunch of new things, then that could give me some insight into something that I do love. Because the only thing I can do that is a mistake is sitting here in this job that I know I don't like, where I'm not getting any kind of meaning and fulfillment. There's kind of all these different voices in your head saying, hey, you're 23, you need to stick it out. Your mom's gonna be pissed. And like all these things in my head that's telling me to stay here, but I couldn't ignore it. And so I was talking to my wife, and something we had done in college was come up with a bucket list of things you want to do before you die. It's all this just fun stuff. And somewhere on my bucket list was to travel to every state. And we thought maybe that would take a really long time to go and do. And it's a really cool picture of our RV right there. And on my bucket list, it was to travel to all 50 states. One day I wanted to make a documentary over something I was passionate about. And the third thing was I also wanted to speak on stage at the Camping Awards. So as a my life is complete. But these were the first two, no offense, I'm super excited to be here, but the first two were real things that I wanted to do, and we thought it would take years and years and years to go and fulfill this. But then I was talking to my wife, I was trying to figure out what to do after our wedding. We want to stay here. She quit her job to come be in Austin with me so we could get married. And we were kind of tossing around different ideas, and I said, you know what? Let's go travel. And we both kind of tossed around some ideas. I said, let's go try to find somewhere to live. And she said, why don't we just go to all 50 states? I said, let's do it. And so we came up with this bold idea to go and travel around the country, but we needed an income, I needed work, and we wanted to have a project, something measurable, some kind of mission that we could work towards together while we were traveling around the country, not just aimlessly traveling without a purpose like a hippie in a van, because we kind of already were doing that. And so I came up with this idea that I would work a job in every state. I came up with this idea with a mentor of mine, and he threw it out there, and I was like, I love that, because I don't know what point or what's going to get me to where I want to be in my career. And I know maybe one day I want to own my own business and I want to start something of my own, but I don't know what are the steps that I need to get there. And I don't feel like I'm getting it where I am right now, so I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go work a job in every state. I'm going to try things out. Anything that I want to go do, the sky's the limit, I'm just going to go for it. And it's ironic that he had that presentation before, because I literally thought to myself, I'm going to go test drive different careers. And so that was my whole philosophy, so we'll get along really well. And so the first thing I did was I called my wife and I said, hey, I got this idea for what we can do on this 50-state road trip. I'm going to work a job in every state. And I kind of dropped the mic and waited for her to tell me how brilliant I am. And she's like, you want to work throughout our entire honeymoon? Yeah. Isn't that a good idea? Like, no, that sounds terrible. I don't want to do that. But I got on Google anyway. I did some search. Our first stop was going to be in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And so I typed in jobs in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the first thing that popped up was an online job board called Snagjob. Many of you have probably heard of that being in this industry. Snagjob does hourly jobs, so any job board that's listed online, they do hourly paid positions. And so I click on them, They were the first one, and I started going through all of these jobs that they have in Albuquerque, like Domino's, Starbucks, all these things. And there's hundreds of listings. So I started thinking to myself, like, this is gonna be really hard to find a job in every state. A lot of my friends are trying to find jobs out of college and struggling to do this. It's gonna be crazy to try to actually land a job in every state. But I had an idea. I was already sending out tons of cold emails and getting no responses, so I figured, what's one more? I found their head of marketing's email on LinkedIn, and I shot him a message. And it was, to this day, the best cold email I've ever sent in my life. Like, I just opened up my heart to this guy, and I was just, you know what, I'm 23, trying to figure it out. I don't know where I'm going, but I got this idea to go around the country with my wife after we get married, and I'm gonna work a job in every state, and just kind of go figure it out, I guess. And to my surprise, 10 minutes later, I got a phone call. Not an email, but a phone call. Back from this guy named John, who worked in the public relations department. And John was pumped. John had been apparently trying to find some kind of intern to get like a rapid bus and travel around the country for a really long time. And he was like, I've been wanting somebody to go work jobs around the country. And he was all excited. And I hadn't even quit my job at this point. I'm like cuddling in this cubby, just trying to make it sound like I'm like, yeah, I got it all planned out. And so we had this conversation, and he's like, you know what, send me some references, and send me some of your writing that you've done, some of your blogging, and you know, we'll talk in a few days. And so he gave me a call back in a few days, and he said, hey, come up here to Richmond, Virginia, where our headquarters is, and let's have a conversation. And so I was like, okay. Because what I had said in the email when I reached out to them was I had asked them if they could help me line up some of the jobs when I was traveling. I didn't ask them for sponsorship. Kind of like Molly mentioned this morning, you know, if you ask for advice, you get, was it money? If you ask for money, you get advice, something like that. And so I didn't ask for a sponsorship or anything like that. I just sent an email and told them why I was doing it. And I said, I would love it if you guys could help me line up a few jobs. Because putting the weight behind a big company would allow me to just travel around more and have to spend less time reaching out to jobs. And so I went up there and I told them my vision for Hourly America. I said, I want to work a job in every state first and foremost. I want to learn new skills, any job that I feel like sounds cool, I'm going to go out and try it. And I also want to interview the people that I work alongside. So if they're older, you know, figure out some of the cool things they've done in their career. And as a writer, this really appealed to me because I felt like I would get a lot of really great content, hearing people's stories and how they got to where they were in their career, things they loved, things they regretted. And it just sounded like a lot of fun, something that would be really cool to do. And after the meeting, I really liked them because I knew that as much as they might attach themselves to me, I would also have to attach who I was to them as a brand. And so I wanted to make sure that I liked them as well. And after the meeting, John pulled me aside and said, Heath, we talked about it, we really like this, sounds like a cool opportunity. We're gonna help you find 30% of your jobs. I was like, wow, that's amazing. He's like, we also want to help pay for your food and some of your gas. It's like, even better. He's like, also, would you be interested in turning into a documentary? And that I did not expect. He said, we'll send you the film equipment, it'll be yours, you do whatever you want with it. And having no film experience, I said yes. But not before I talked to my wife, and I said, hey look, it says they'll send us some film equipment, and let us turn it into a documentary, it'll be our project, we can do whatever we want with it, we can say whatever we want, and it's ours, and we can do it. She said, we've always wanted to do this, we have to say yes. And I said, well, you're gonna have to be one of films. And she said, let's do it. And that was my first lesson, that marrying an amazing woman is like a secret weapon. And so, the morning of our wedding, and then we became filmmakers, and the morning of our wedding, 2 cameras arrived, I kid you not, they showed up in the mail that day. The next day, we moved into our new RV that we bought off Craigslist, so it wasn't new, but it was new to us. And 4 days after our wedding, we hit the road. And we're pretty terrified. And this picture right here on the far left is kind of difficult to see, but that's the first time my wife drove our 29-foot RV. And we got, if you've ever been to West Texas, there's nothing there. Like, it's a great abyss. Verizon got service in every state except for West Texas. And we're like driving out there, and the speed limit's 80, and it's usually great, but our RV is going to brisk 45 because we pull out behind one of those mobile wide homes, and it's just like, taking up 3/4 of the road, and Alyssa looks at me, and she's freaking out. And she's like, how are we gonna get past this? And I'm like, you got this, we can do this. And so after like 3 little turns when she tries to go without around, she finally makes it around, and I'm like sweating, turning up the AC, and kind of like, you got this. And we finally make it around, and I grabbed a GoPro and I snapped a picture because I was like, I want to remember this moment. And she was annoyed that I took the picture. I was like, don't worry, it's not like anybody will see it. This picture will go on CNN and Yahoo. And so, even though I was faking it in the picture, I had pretty much every right to be nervous in this moment because I didn't know what was going to happen. I had quit my first real job out of college. I didn't know if we were going to have enough money to make it around the country. They were paying a portion of our bills, but it cost more than $1,000 a month to travel around the country full time. And so we were going to have to essentially, oh yeah, you like that? So I was wondering, like, is the RV going to break down, or my in-laws going to hate me because I'm taking their daughter and going on this crazy journey? And hopefully we'd still have a great relationship at the end of it, because it is testing being in a really small space for your first year of marriage. And so I knew all of these things were going to be difficult, roadblocks that we have to overcome. And so we get on the road and we start heading west. And one of the first things I realized during this process was I was going to have a different experience than a lot of job seekers. I knew that. I knew because we were filming a documentary, we had a corporate sponsor, that companies were going to treat me a little bit differently than they would a normal job seeker. And that was something that I realized and I kind of came to grips with, and I realized that even though some companies are more than likely going to treat us differently, I still want to try to find a way to have an authentic experience during this whole journey. So how can I really try to learn a new skill and have them treat me like I'm a first day hire? And also the typical job seeker will probably work more than one day because that's as long as I was working in some of these places. And so we got on the road, and in New Mexico I worked for a martial arts dojo that was on there, and that was like the hardest thing. It's a 13-hour day of being kicked around by 8-year-old kids. And then on the West Coast I worked for the Inland Empire 66ers, which is the minor league team of the LA Angels, and it was awesome. I just worked on their cleaning crew for the day. It was cleaning the locker room, so it wasn't like glamorous work, but it was fun. I was outside and I was enjoying the work that I was doing. And by this point, I started realizing a little bit what companies resonate with me and which companies I would want to work for, and how to reach out to them, because while snagged up with their weight behind the first few businesses that hired me, before too long I started having to reach out to these companies on my own. And so I was trying to figure out how to do this. And the first time I did that was in Las Vegas. And it took me a whole week to actually find the job because part of me was just scared. I was like, I don't know what to say. I'm calling these people, it's embarrassing, and I don't know what companies are willing to hire me. And so I started realizing what I was going to look for in a business. And the first thing I would do was I would get on their website and I would look at how they presented themselves. Was this company acting like some robotic voice that came out of the Siri on the iPhone and just acting like there wasn't a real person there? Or did it sound like somebody was behind this as a real voice trying to engage with me and interact with me? And that was the very first thing I looked for. And I felt like if they didn't have that, then I couldn't relate to them at all. And the next thing I looked for was good reviews. If they didn't have good reviews, I wouldn't even look at them. And the last thing was people having fun. So like getting on their social media, and I worked at Arby's in Atlanta, and something cool they've done is like they've made a whole heap of like, have you all seen that with like Pharrell's hat? It looks like the Arby's hat, they've auctioned it off and all this stuff. They're just having fun. And I realized that after I looked at some of these websites, I'm like, I can kind of relate to this and this company for whatever reason. It's not just, boring stock photos and makes you want to jump off. And when I get on their social media, it's just like they're engaging, they're not just broadcasting stuff, they're actually engaging with the people and having fun with it. And I know that doesn't maybe appeal to every job seeker, maybe not every job seeker cares about those kind of things, but for me, that was what was important while I was looking for these companies to hire me. And so we made our way across the Midwest, nothing too exciting happened there. And except for we got struck by lightning in South Dakota. That was interesting. And our fridge blew up on a hill, because apparently if you have a propane fridge in an RV, you can't park it on a hill or your coils will blow up, so that happened. Even though a lot of these crazy things happened and I started finding jobs and I worked quite a few, I still did get quite a few no's. I had a lot of companies that were just like, no, we're not going to bring you in. And the way I would reach out to them is I would call them or email them or a combination. Some places I showed up in person, just told them I was traveling around the country working jobs. Would you bring me in for a day? And let me come and see what it's like being a barista or a martial arts assistant or anything like that. But in Ohio, of all places, the state hated me. Like for some reason, Ohio just did not want to give me a job. I saw on the clip, like I've been rejected 4 times, it's already 9. I ended up being rejected like 5 times that morning before 10 a.m. Like that was a bad day. And I don't know if you've ever been rejected multiple times in a row. A lot of the guys in the room probably have. It's painful. Like it hurts. No matter what you say, like it hurts after a little while. And we've been on the road pretty much, and I started thinking to myself, what am I doing? Is this relevant to anybody except myself? I'm gonna have this huge gap, maybe on my resume. I ended up putting all these jobs on my LinkedIn, by the way. And so I'm just like, all of this, I'm just wondering, as I'm getting all these no's that morning, does what I'm doing matter? Is it relevant to anybody besides myself? Is there any bigger mission in this for anybody else, or is it just about me? And I'm struggling with all these questions, and money is getting low, and just started doubting. I started doubting myself in this whole process. But I get on the phone again, and I make another call. There's the Cleveland Indians. I want to be the bat boy. I thought that would be cool to be a bat boy for the night. And I get on the phone with their hiring manager, and she's really nice. She says, "Oh, Heath, I love what you're doing. It sounds really fun. But we already committed to this local charity that they can come in and be the bat boy and the bat girl for that night, and I can't review that." And so I said, no problem. I completely understand. But what about, throwing peanuts? That would be awesome. I would love to go chunk peanuts at people and sell those. We'd be good at that. And she said, well, you have to have a little bit of training for that. It's kind of late notice. The game's tonight. And I said, I understand. And she said, well, what about coming back next week? Our next home series is in 4 days. You can come back then, and we can talk about you being the bat boy. And I said, we have a schedule to meet. Otherwise, I would love to do that. And before we got off the phone, she also offered me a few alternative restaurants that I should go and check out for a job that evening. And I got off the phone with her, and I immediately knew that something was different. I got off the phone, I felt encouraged, first of all. And I realized that she did something different than almost every other no that I got on the trip so far. Every other business that had told me no, it had been in one of two ways. There had been crickets, they hadn't said anything, or they just said no and left it at that. But she did something different. First of all, she gave me a reason why. She told me why she rejected me. And it made me realize that had nothing to do with my request for a job and everything to just do with what I was offering didn't fit her needs. And the next thing she did was she offered me a concession. Not like a hot dog, but like a concession, meaning she offered something less. And she said, well, we can't bring you in today, but we can bring you in a few days if you want to come in and be the bat boy then. And the last thing she did before we got off the phone, she offered me an alternative. She said, well, we can't bring you in. I'm sorry, I love what you're doing, but we can't bring you in. Go check out these local restaurants. And for me, this was an eye-opening experience because I realized that all those other companies that had said no to me on this trip, they kind of treated me a little bit like I was a burden. And whether or not they felt that way, I felt that way whenever they said that to me. I felt like I was a burden when they said no to me. And I realized from this hiring manager, and I wish I remember her name, but I don't, I realized that all of those companies had missed out on an opportunity to win me over as a fan. They missed out on an opportunity to turn me into a fan, even though they said no to me in the process. And some people are going to hate you no matter what. I know that some people are going to be hurtful and they'll say bad things when you get rejected, and that happens. But I just knew that this was a huge learning opportunity for me. And so she didn't reject me, she just rejected my offer. And I think there's a big difference there that can be learned. And so I ended up working at an underground bar, which is a speakeasy. Maybe you've ever been to those. They're like hipster places to go for bars. And so we get back on the road and we head up to the Northeast, and I find a job in Kittery, Maine, at this little place called Bob's Clam Hut. It's this little shack on the side of the road in it's the side of the road in Kittery, Maine, and they sell amazing, amazing seafood. They've been on Diner Drives and Dives with the guy Ferrari, the guy with spiky hair, and they serve really good food. And by this point, I'd worked at so many businesses, it was like 30-something, and I could kind of realize immediately when I walked into a business, by the energy, by the way the employees treated us, by the way the manager treated us, how the day was going to go. And as soon as I walked into Bob's, I immediately knew that the day was going to go differently. I walked in the back, and everybody was in a circle, and they said how long they'd been working there, and it was 3 years, 5 years, 13 years was the longest an employee had been there. After one of their employees had been there until she was 85 years old, she passed away, and then they painted her picture on Lillian's window was her name. And customers still come back and ask for Lillian. And so to me, I'm thinking to myself, this is an industry where turnover is typically pretty high. I don't know the exact numbers, but I can guarantee in the quick service industry, people turn around a lot. But for some reason, people are sticking around here. And as the team said, go Bob's, and everybody started going to their stations, I just felt there was an energy going on. I started my day off squeezing their secret sauce. They wouldn't tell me what was inside. And then I went to the fish fryer, and I'm like getting burned, but like people are having a good time, so it's fun, the weather is great, it's fall. And then my third station was at the cashier, and I shouted this guy named Justin right there that's beside me. And Justin said, this is my favorite place to work in all of Bob's. He said, up here, it's like you're on a stage. You get to be whoever you want to be. You can figure out the numbers, you can figure out the cash register and all that stuff, and once you figure that out, you'll be good. But people come here from all over the country, and they want an experience, they want something they'll remember. We had a few customers come up, and he was just kind of like, watch me and smile and be nice. And this lady came up and she said, I drove here from hours away. She was like, and this was one of many people who said this. She was like, I drove here from hours away, I cannot wait to have your clams. You're one of my favorite places in all of Maine to order clams. And he laughed, he said, we always love to hear that, but I'm just curious, why aren't we your #1 place to get clams? And she's like, well, you're definitely in the top 3. And he's like, well, why aren't we #1? And respectfully, but he goes back and forth with this lady for like 10 minutes and trying to convince her that they have the best clams in all of Maine. And I'm just sitting back watching this and full like, this guy, like, what is happening? And I've never seen somebody who was so passionate about what they were selling who wasn't an owner in the business. And afterwards, I was just like, Justin, that was amazing. What compelled you to, what compelled you to say that? What compelled you to go back and forth with this lady? He said, I just really believe in what it is we're doing here. And what I had been thinking when I was shadowing Justin is I was walking around and I was thinking to myself, like, I hope I don't screw this up. Like, I know I'm just working and I'm frying fish, but I really hope that I don't screw this up. And afterwards, I was talking to the owner and he said, I bought this restaurant from Bob after him and his wife owned it for 30 years. And I didn't want to screw it up. And I thought that was crazy that he said that after I'd been thinking that throughout the day. And what he told me was that in college, he had traveled around to different hut restaurants and put a board up in his room, his college apartment, and like rated them. He was like the Yelp before Yelp was a thing. And he grew up with this passion for providing amazing hut food. It's what he loved to do. And as a result, it transcended into his employees. And they have something unique also that they do profit sharing for quick service restaurants. All the employees at the end of the quarters, they get extra profits if they do really well, which is neat. And another thing they do is in the tip jar, they all get to pick a local charity for each time somebody does tips, which is neat also because normally in that type of industry, you want every type of tip you could possibly get to take home. And so in other words, they have this big mission around them. And for me, how this applied to my whole experience was I started looking for companies that I felt like really lived out the mission statement. Not just put it on the wall in a plaque and just didn't care about it, but they lived it out and you can tell. It wasn't just this facade they tried to put up to make themselves look good. And so we get back on the road, and we're trying to make it down south before winter because RVs don't run well in the snow. And so we get down to Gainesville, Florida, and I have a job later that week at Arby's in Atlanta, and I'm trying to find a job. It's right after Thanksgiving, and I only have a couple days, and I get online, and I find a place called New Scooters for Less. And normally I would never work at a place that put number 4 in their name instead of the words 4 because that drives me crazy when people do that. But they had a really cool website, and on their website it said, they had these 12 core values listed. And the first one said, create the ultimate customer experience. I was like, that sounds interesting. And number 12 said, if you're late, bring donuts, and I was like, sold. And so I sent them an email, and I read all of this other stuff on their website, and I followed up with a phone call, left a voicemail. And I went back in the RV and I told Alyssa, I was like, hey Dave, I got us a job, don't worry about this. And she said, you only reach out to one business? Because every other time along our trip, I'd reach out to at least 5, every time. And it was because with New Scooters for Less, I legitimately feel like by reading everything that they said about themselves and looking at their social media, their Facebook, their Twitter, the way they interact, I was like, I just know they're gonna hire me. She was like, whatever, what they do. And so the next morning they called me and said, Heath, we'd love to have you come in tomorrow. And so less than 24 hours later, I showed up, my first day of work at New Scooters for Less. And because when we drive an RV, we're always late because it doesn't go over 40 miles an hour, we brought donuts. And so I walked up and said hello to Colin, and my first, Colin's the owner of New Scooters for Less, and he's got this big Santa Claus hat on. I said, it's good to see you, man. And he takes me to the back, and I saw something that I'll remember forever. His whole team was lined up in a big line, and there's this table filled with pastries and donuts. More donuts that morning. And coffee and orange juice. And he walks up and he hands me a mechanic shirt with my name embroidered on it. And I had less than 24 hours to do this. In my mind, I'm thinking, this guy loves documentaries. He really wants to look good. And obviously, that's the only explanation right now. Like, he wants to look good on the film. But as it turns out, my first impression was wrong because Colin has this thing called the ultimate customer experience. And what I mean by that is when somebody buys a scooter from Colin, he doesn't just bring him up and let him go. What he does is he brings his whole team together in the back, and they sign a balloon and a handwritten note, giving them tips for how to use their scooter. They make a swag bag and they hide it under the seat. Then he comes up to the front and he rings a bell. And then he talks in front of a megaphone, or yells in a megaphone, and like gathers everybody in the store to go outside and take a Polaroid picture in front of the scooter. And the customer's like taking selfies and loving it. And then they say, open your seat, and then this balloon pops out. And this is what he calls the ultimate customer experience. And I'll tell you, from seeing it in person, it is. And as a result, Colin, if any of you have ever been to Gainesville, it is Scooterville, USA. Like, there are scooters everywhere. Like, you cannot drive around Gainesville, Florida without there being tons of scooters. And a lot of them have new scooters with the last little logos on them. And this has me thinking, what would it look like for everybody in this room to create the ultimate hiring experience? What would it look like for us to metaphorically put a balloon under the seat of people that you're hiring into your business? And in a small business, you know, people can do this, but I think the real enemy here is trying to automate everything. It's like, it's not practical to pull all of your hourly workers out for 15 or 20 minutes when you're paying them by the hour and have them sign a balloon. It's not practical, but as a result, people get online, people talk, and he's built a whole movement around scooters. And so to me, the real choice is we can either spend more time trying to automate the process or more time trying to customize the experience. I'm gonna say that again just because I want to make sure you get it. We can either spend more time automating the process or more time customizing the experience. And I feel like everyone here also has a choice, and all the businesses that hired me had a choice. Either be average or try to look good when somebody shows up with a camera and, you know, put your best foot forward. Because we did have those places where I had an HR manager walk behind me so nobody said anything stupid. You know, and I get that. I totally get it. You know, they were taking a risk on bringing me into their business. Who was I? And even though that happened, there were also the outliers, the things that happened whether or not we were making a documentary. And so what this made me realize was that, sure, some places treat us differently because we're making a film. And we got a little bit better treatment because of that. But in 2015, everybody has a smartphone. Everybody is out there broadcasting their life across Facebook and Twitter and social media and everything like that. Everybody, no matter what happens, is going to tell somebody else when they have something amazing happen to them. When they buy a scooter from New Scooters for Less and they blow them away in the process, they're going to get on their phone and they're going to tell their friends. And when they have a bad experience from a hiring process or somebody treats them like a jerk, they're going to do the same thing. And when they're average, nobody's going to say anything. And so, to me, everybody's broadcasting their life right now. What are job seekers going to say about you? Thank you.
I hope that you enjoyed that look at Heath's presentation and the merging of the visual elements throughout. What I am really proud of Heath for is that you could tell that he made the audience laugh, he made the audience care, and he made the audience think, all of which combined to make a wonderful presentation that I was happy to contribute to. So well done, Heath. Thank you guys for watching and checking it out. I hope maybe it gave you some ideas about what you might want to do for future presentations, big and small. Let me know what you end up doing with these ideas. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.